Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Canadian Football Central, CFL content for the fans, by the fans. And we have quite a video coming up. First of all, thank you to Scout from the Elks herd for coming onto the show again. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed having you on the last time we did the Edmonton midseason video. But the Edmonton Elks, 75 years as a public franchise, now have been sold and are owned by Larry Thompson, owner of Thompson Brothers Construction in Edmonton, season ticket holder, and rumors now of the possibility of reverting the name change from Elks back to Eskimos or Esks. I heard that was rumored too, although I'm not going to lie. From everything I've seen, it doesn't seem like that's the popular one. It seems like it's either going to be Elks and it stays, or it goes back to Eskimos. And there is a rampant debate online. And the first, I want to put out a bit of a disclaimer before we get into this. I don't care about any sort of political shit. None of that. Absolutely none of that. None of that stuff. I'm not getting into that. I want to focus more on the impact that this would have, whether this goes one way or the other. I think that's a much more important conversation to have, because people will have what they believe, and they most likely won't be changing that if they see someone online. That's just how this whole ordeal always goes. So, Scout, how are you feeling? Because, I mean, you're an Elks fan. You're in, Alberta, in Edmonton. You got to be in, like, the eye of the storm here, I imagine.
Yeah, it's rather crazy right now in Edmonton. First off, Rick Carter, always thrilled to be on the show, so thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely.
Now, Edmonton right now is indeed the eye of the CFL storm.
Holy crap.
Sure.
And that's saying something when Nathan Rourke gets signed.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We're over Nathan Rourke watch era. He's finally gone back home to BC, which, I was recently on Edmonton Sports Talk and just talking about Nathan Rourke potentially returning in a year or two. No, this happened now. So that's a big deal on its own. But as far as the Edmonton Elks, we have a storm of information. So basically, like you said, Larry Thompson, the former owner of Thompson Brothers Construction or Thompson Construction Group, he was the owner. He was one of the owners.
Is he not? Because you said former. So is he?
So he actually sold his business last year for hundreds of millions of dollars. So
I think that is important to kind of specify. That's why I'm asking. Okay.
Very, yeah. I mean, we're talking about somebody that's coming in. They have money in the pockets, and they've also, like you said, season ticket holder. They've also watched,
and that's a big time commitment. If he was still involved in the construction company, especially, we're talking about involved in a company that, again, sold for hundreds of millions of dollars or $100 million, whatever it is. So it's one of those things where if he still had management in that, then he wouldn't be able to invest all of his time in the team. So I think that's an important thing. And I think that's a positive thing, actually, in the sense of if he buys the Elks or Edmonton Football Club, Football Club, whatever the hell we're calling this team, because we don't even know anymore. It's important that they have an owner that's going to be able to buy in. Because, I mean, if we look at the effect that it's had in BC, when you have an owner that's able to buy in, spend the time, spend the money, investing, knowing you got to spend money to make money in some instances, I think that's huge. So I think the fact that this is kind of his sole focus now, really positive.
Well, and I mean, we're talking about potentially somewhere in the range of 500 to 700 million Thompson Construction Group ended up selling for.
Wow.
So deep pockets. We would like to assume anyways. Very well known in Spruce Grove, which is just west, Stony Plain, right beside it. And then of course, Edmonton as well. Thompson Brothers Construction was a very major company. So already somebody that is local, somebody with deep pockets, somebody that has watched the decline of the Edmonton Elks. And now let's talk about one of the most important pieces to this. Just hours after the leak had come out from Dave Naylor of TSN, who is a very, very reputable source.
Yep.
Dustin Nielsen ended up speaking up just hours later, the play-by-play guy for the CFL for TSN. And when you have two sources like that going back and forth with information, one, the leak is Larry Thompson, but then two, new ownership is very interested in rebranding to Esks or Eskimos. And, we have to say the name because we may be calling this team that name again. And that is concerning for some. It's concerning, I think, on a lot of levels, but at the same time, it's going to have positive effects for the team, obviously, with an injection of attendance for those that have not been at the stadium simply because of a name, right? It's silly that we are talking about it, but at the same time, I have a
question regarding that. So yeah. I've seen the argument of people that have maybe boycotted the team or maybe have said we're not going to go to the games because of that. However, I understand a portion of that, but in large part, I have to imagine, I mean this in no offense, it's because I would like from what I've seen, it's one of those things where it's let's assume they kept the name. How has the on-field product been? I mean, ever since changing the name to Elks, if we look at that record since then, not only has the on-field product that Edmonton has been generally pretty bad. I mean, you guys went a whole season without winning a single game at home. Because it's also the home games that you guys have struggled with. If the team's not winning, people don't show up. And again, I'm not saying that there are people that are not boycotting for that reason. There probably is a few. And you know what? Maybe there's a lot. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and that's the reason why everyone's not there, and that by changing the name, everyone comes back. Maybe I'm completely wrong in that aspect. But it's one of those things where it's I can't help be a little skeptical about that claim because of the situation. It's in the sense of, if we're talking about an Elks team that is thriving, that's performing, or even just in the middle standings wise, and is able to get some wins at home, they'll obviously lose some games, and they're just in the middle of the pack. Is that the situation? I don't know the answer. That to me is the question.
I want to say it's the players, because there is no way in HE double hockey sticks that you're going to sit there and tell me because someone changed the name that they ended up having this long losing streak. I don't care who you are.
Well, yeah, no,
there's no I want to see scientific proof that that's a thing. But Scout, I do have a question for you, my friend.
What you got, Rick?
So my question is, going from public owned.
No, it's because you had Chris Jones. That's why.
Going from public owned to now private.
That's a big deal.
How does that work? Do all the people that forked in money get a share? How does something like that work?
That's a good question.
So there are shareholders. Now, the organization has lost a fair amount of money, right? So we can only assume that there's money owed somewhere. There is shareholders. Now it's a community owned. It's a community owned team. Obviously there's private ownership now, but that's what we're moving away from. So in that instance, the board dissolves, the board disappears, but as far as money, it would go back to any actual shareholders of the team in that instance. And then, of course, it would pay off any debts as well. So there is
I imagine some debt management is part of this.
There is going to be a little bit of debt, I'm sure, paid off somewhere, because in these instances, when you're losing money, and they have had money in the bank for a while, they have had that rainy day fund. Well, that has dried up. There's essentially no rainy day fund left. So really, I mean, that's a good question as well. I don't know the exact particulars on that, but I do know that there is shareholders of the community owned part of it. So, going forward, I would assume that those shareholders, maybe they have an option to buy shares in the new version, or maybe they can actually carry them over in some ways. But, if you're changing your structure completely,
I don't know,
yeah, I would assume that they're going to dissolve that whole structure, and they're going to start from scratch. And who knows, maybe Larry does end up opening public shares or something like that. Doesn't usually happen in pro sports.
If it does, usually they will never open up a majority, in the sense of that if they do open from a private to public, they'll still keep it in private by buying 51% share. And then so that way, because if you have 51% share, it's the same thing as having 75 in the sense of you just bang, overrule anything. So the only way that this team opens up any public shares are if they essentially open them up and immediately bang, 51% gone. And that's the only way I see them doing. But one thing I have to say is being bought privately and being able to, because I think the debt is an interesting conversation here, because that's a conversation I don't see happening because it's completely overshadowed by all the name stuff. But I have to imagine that when you're making an acquisition of a business that has some debt with it, I have to imagine that some of that debt at least some of that debt has to get covered on that transaction. If you're in debt with someone else, and it's one of those things where you hear that someone else is going to sell their company, it's like, okay, well, if that guy's buying that company, some of that money's got to come to me, as this team owes me. So it's like at least some of that in the initial transaction, if not all of it, but I imagine that at least it's a portion, and probably over time that gets thinned out. But this is a crazy time, Scout. This is crazy.
And I mean, I don't think anybody a week ago thought we would be even talking about a name change again, let alone private ownership finally being announced. I mean, there was some speculation. I guess I will say that Dave Naylor did announce, within the last week that we would be seeing this announcement soon. But then leaks happen. People started speaking up on anonymity, and it's all happening very, very fast. I believe 10 or 11 a.m. tomorrow, the Edmonton Elks will officially have the press conference. Yeah. But
and that'll be when that will probably be about an hour before, or this will be about in the same morning that this video gets uploaded. Just so if anyone's watching the video now, you guys can probably actually go and check that out for yourself. So I encourage you to do so and hear whatever it is. Maybe it's great, maybe it's an absolute train wreck. I don't know. But feel free to do that. So
what makes it interesting is, like Scout said, you go from having a board so everyone votes on something to an owner that just says, okay, like, I don't want this guy. This guy's going. This coach is not going to be here. Like, I want this president, this GM. Like, he has his final say instead of a board voting on what's going to happen.
That is such a double-edged sword, as that can be such a good thing or such a bad thing. As I think one of the problems with Chris Jones was because he had kind of a decent amount of power, it was so hard to get rid of him if you wanted to get rid of him. And so if you got an owner where they want to get rid of a guy, bang, he's gone. That's it. But it's also good to have, if it's one man's vision and that guy's vision gets a little flawed, that's where you then run into some problems too. And so it can go either way.
You can see that in other leagues where team owners, basically team owners of any sports team in any sports league, they can have too much influence and they can have their fingers in too deep. Now, what's interesting is with Chris Jones, when he was let go, Larry Thompson had to sign off on that. And now we know who the owner was who was signing off on that motion, right? At the end of the line, they were transitioning in those moments even to private ownership and how the organization is going to adjust. They started making that transition right then and there. So it's very, very interesting. And I think something that we should dig into pretty hard is, once again, the name change, which we should not be here in this moment because, like you said, 3 home wins in 4 or 5 years. That's what keeps fans away. That's what kills your attendance. That is the real problem. Organizational rot, as many have described it, including alumni members. We see a lot of these comments online. And right now, even in polling, in some of our polls that we're doing and some of the ones we're seeing right now on social media, we're seeing anywhere from a 66-33 split to like a 50-50 split on opinion when it comes to changing the name. A lot of
Yeah.
fans don't want us to move away from the Edmonton Elks. Why? Because this league needs to take care of the future, and specifically the Edmonton Football Club needs to take care of their future. Kids love the Edmonton Elks logo. You know,
It's a
there's
more
nothing
relatable brand for children. It definitely is.
easily.
It
No,
definitely is. It's one of those things where it's like when you see like it's just something you can identify more with. Just because I'll put it this way: when I was a kid, no idea what the hell I didn't know what an Eskimo was. No idea, no clue. And so it's one of those things where it's also the one thing that's a very touchy subject, and I've seen very, very. I've seen mixed results when it comes to also polling on the name change in regards to the Inuit population, whether they support this, whether they don't. Then there's some people who don't identify as Inuit but identify as Eskimo. So it's just all over the place, and it's so hard to get an idea of a consensus because someone will put out a poll and then someone will say, okay, this poll isn't valid because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay. And then you see another poll that they're pointing towards, and then someone else, this isn't valid because X, Y, and Z. And it's like, what the hell do I believe? What exactly is going on? And so I think this is really difficult because I think it's also a little strange in the sense of that, I mean, with teams like Edmonton, and I'm going there because this is around the same time, Washington and Cleveland changed their names at the exact same time. The Washington Redskins, now the Washington Commanders, and then the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, had changed their names at similar times. But it's interesting because that was a name change from a brand that had been around for many, many years and changing to something new. We're now talking about a change from the new thing back to the old thing. And so it's just... it's such this I don't even know.
See, what I would do is if I was the owner, I'd say, okay, all you people that you want to have a say, you have a year. Everyone gets a vote. Everyone go on this website, have a poll like they did with the Utah, whatever they're going to be named.
Utah Hockey Club, baby, that's what they are.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying is
Football Club for the next 100 years.
Just everyone has one vote and go and vote, and whatever it is at the end, that's what they have. People that are Indians and things like that have a vote. Everyone has a vote, and just let everyone have a vote, and whatever it is at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Well, and I mean, we are seeing a lot of that opinion. The other thing too is some look at it like a step backwards, but
yeah,
the thing is that if one of the greatest points I'd like to make here is the fact that if Larry Thompson walks in and changes the name and reverts it, this would be considered like a catalyst for a global shift. Right? Because what's going to happen now with Washington, who already has lawsuits against the name change?
Yep.
You know, they have
Cleveland. Also, University of North Dakota used to be the Fighting Sioux, now the Fighting Hawks. That's another name change, although that happened a few years prior.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's just
Fighting
another
Irish, I'm sure.
Portland Winterhawks. That's another example. Used to just be they just had changed the logo. They kept the name, but they now are referring to something different.
A winter hawk. It's
like an actual winter hawk as opposed to the indigenous logo that they had before. So it's just
or here's an idea. Okay, so you go just think of this idea for a second. So if you say you're gonna go do the Eskimo name, let the what do you call them, Carter? Indigenous.
Indigenous.
Inuit
indigenous, yeah.
Okay, so why don't you use the name? Go find one of those people that are really good designers in that culture and let them design the logo.
That's not.
And then everyone's happy.
That's an interesting idea because I will say it's one of those things. The EE is an iconic logo, but one of the things I love about the Edmonton Elks brand as the Elks branding is that they're able to use either. and that they can go between those two. I'll put it this way. I love the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Our logo is just a fucking W. That's all it is. I would love to see a little bit of creativity. And so I think that this would be a very good opportunity if they do decide to go that route.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it does suck to see this happen once again, just because I think that the Elks
you got to go through
really
the whole process all over again.
Well, but not only that, but the Elks did very good as an organization on marketing it after that first year. The first year when they came in with the name, it was dull. The look on the field wasn't exactly the greatest. I will give Matthew Iwanek credit for that one over at EST, but I mean, he pointed that out. And once you look back at it, it's like a mishmash of two teams. You're using, 2019 Eskimos jerseys with 2021 antler helmets. That wasn't exactly the best look. But 2022, they really pulled it around. And then, now we have what we have in 2024. So with a really cool alternate as well. The alternate patch that they came out with was really good. The Edmonton Elks Football Club with the little oil derrick and whatnot. It's actually on that jersey right there. That one right there. So, they've done really good. This is a Turf Traditions hat that they just came out with 2 years ago, I want to say. So it's not like the Edmonton Elks have ever shied away from their history, but
that's true.
If you're a businessman and you need ticket sales in a gate-driven league, here in Edmonton, there's one thing that you can do to inject fans into your home stadium. And luckily for Larry Thompson, he's going to be coming into a club that is, kind of on the upswing from a rebuild. So he's going to be seeing the benefit of bringing in potentially a new name alongside a better product, which is what the Edmonton Elks really needed. They did have an opportunity to change it at more of a winning time. And unfortunately, it just so happened when, sponsorship money really, really mattered. Once again, Larry Thompson is coming in as somebody that has some money and may be willing to pay for a couple of losing years with this organization.
Yeah. Well, and even whether this team was changing the name or not, that was something that I think he knew he had to be prepared to do. In terms of that, he's going to have to spend some money to get this team kind of up to scratch and being able to get this team back on the field and winning on the field. But one thing I think that is kind of an interesting point of discussion is there's the teams, there's the fan base, and then there's the relationship with the Indigenous peoples and with the Inuit. And so there's some debate in the sense of that this debate maybe shouldn't necessarily be with the fans and should be more with the Inuit people, as essentially as the name is representing that. And so this is why it's difficult in the sense of necessarily, like, could we theoretically just give everyone a vote and see where that goes? Yes, but should everyone get a vote? That's another question. And so it's very difficult in the sense of, because obviously the fans will always draw that feeling like this is the team representing our city. But then obviously the Indigenous peoples will view it as this is a name that is representing our culture. And so that's
why you have the votes and everyone gets a say, and then that way
again, but that's where you run into the issue of should everyone get a say? And the answer is I don't know.
Well, and the other thing that we have to remember too is the Inuit up north in the different regions from west to east.
Yeah.
The approval rating was very high to very low. It basically evened out up north, right? So there would have to be really, really good consultation. The other thing,
I think it would be important having some proper consultation. I think that's very important in the event that they decide to change that name.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then the other thing too is before the Edmonton Eskimos were community owned, therefore representing the city of Edmonton truly, right? The city of Edmonton really, really had to watch what they were doing with their brand, especially as times came up to speed and there was outrage over the name. Now going forward, the team is the representative of potentially Larry Thompson, right?
Larry Thompson.
So,
Yep.
no longer does this team really need to walk on eggshells when it comes to things that they want to do outside of course, conforming to, let's say,
Just
anything that the CFL would want or TSN.
and general and just general PR and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so one of the things that also is a little bit interesting is in the sense of that they had made this change when they were, and I think this is a good point to kind of bring up, when they were a public entity, that they had made this change, when they had made this move to the Edmonton Elks brand. And it's funny, I'm someone who it's one of those things where when they were the Edmonton Eskimos, they had logo. I'm not going to lie, I do wish they would kind of, maybe an update here or there, something like that, just some small tweaks, just kind of as the times go on. At the end of the day, the double E legendary logo, and is something that they will continue to use no matter what is going to happen. But it's one of those things where I also really like this new Elks identity that they've built. I love the new logo that they've been using. I think it looks really, really sharp. And so if they do go, the one thing I can say for sure is if they do go back to the Edmonton Eskimos, I think it would be really cool. I think Rick's suggestion was actually fantastic. The idea of if you went back to the Eskimos name, of kind of consulting someone from within that community to come up with a logo of their own, or maybe come up with multiple and have the community vote on one of those. Or I think there's it's a very touchy subject, but I think there's a way you can do it where I think there's a way you can accomplish this name change if that is what they're hoping to do, and not have a complete PR nightmare on your hands.
Yeah, there is a way.
Yep.
The other question that I have is, okay, I get the whole owner, got the name change. What do you do moving forward? Do you keep G. Roy Simon? Do you keep, Jackson? Like, obviously, you're an owner. I don't know if there's anyone on the ownership besides him.
I think that'll depend on how the rest of the season goes.
Because, so, going back to what you said earlier, Scout, about how everyone had a say and whatnot, and people having too much... something about how, like, people had more overtop say than others and all that. So I don't know if you know more about the...
It's almost like a bit of bureaucracy,
Well, because the reason why I'm mentioning this is because in Hamilton, it's not just Bob Young who owns the team anymore. It's now Scott Mitchell. You now have the Stelco company, steelworkers, that now have a say. So now everyone wants the CEO or the person above Orlando Steinhauer gone. Well, you can't fire the owner unless he sells his shares, and he will still have a say. So that's where I'm going back as to, like, it's good that there's either one owner or, like, not really more than two, but at least now you can go and say, okay, well, I want you guys to bring in a guy with this experience and that experience.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will say about that is that now with them having just one owner, that's where this will really start to change. And I think the Edmonton Elks or Eskimos or whatever they go as are going to start to look a lot more like these privately owned franchises that you know and love all around professional sports. As community-owned franchises within the, like, professional sports is just becoming less and less common in general. As privatization is just, it's one of those things where there's been more and more bureaucracy added on the community side of things, and there's a higher likelihood, more and more, of people getting into arguments and not agreeing on the direction and this and that. Especially in today's climate, everyone has to disagree about something. It's just how this goes. And so there's very few community-run teams left, so it doesn't surprise me that the Elks are going in this direction.
There's only two left. Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, I believe, are the only two left. And we have to remember...
we ain't done so bad.
But exactly. But you guys are also successful. You guys have had 2 Grey Cups in 4 years or something like that. So, when you take a look at that, it makes the board look a little bit better. I mean, they are also making really good moves to keep this community-owned team moving. So they're getting a little bit of help. They're also working really hard to do that, and they're doing a great job. In the case of the Edmonton Elks, we're talking about our volunteer board up at the very top, trying to manage and work with, the constantly changing sports world. And especially here in the Canadian Football League, where we see many changes. I believe WestJet was just announced as the
That's
league
correct.
flight sponsor. So you take a look at how many changes, sponsors coming in year in, year out. You take a look at even right down to players and 1 year contracts and how they move from team to team. This is a team, or this is a league, sorry, of inconsistency. So
Yeah.
it's you guys. The one thing that Winnipeg is doing well is they're finding consistency, and that's not the one
Yeah.
thing. That's one of
Well,
many things that Winnipeg's
and
doing
and
well.
I bet you in the sense of Winnipeg has a backup plan in the sense of if this community ownership, if somehow it all falls apart. Because I mean, right now the Bombers in terms of attendance percentages, they're doing better than the Jets. But it's one of those things where if somehow community ownership fell apart with the Bombers, I have absolutely no doubt that True North Sports and Entertainment that owns the Winnipeg Jets would purchase the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and it would then go under their wing. So it's an interesting situation there. Saskatchewan, I think, is a little bit different, not in the sense of that it's being run badly. Obviously, they kind of last season were just killed with injuries, and so naturally that was hurting attendance because the on-field product, again, when the on-field product struggles, that will affect attendance. Not saying that will be the reason for everyone, but it's going to be a big effect. But their attendance this year has been a bit better now with Corey Mace getting that franchise in a new direction. And now Edmonton, who is kind of, it really feels like Edmonton was getting to a point in terms of when it came to a franchise and moving forward, not in terms of the name, but in terms of the on-field product. It started to look like Fred Flintstone with the feet on the underside of the car, just trying to get the car moving. And so and everyone else is in their sports cars. And so it's gotta catch back up.
That's exactly what it felt like. And I think with new ownership coming in, the reason why we're talking about the name change is because the owner wants to come in and kind of flush the brand that is associated with losing right now, which is the Edmonton Elks. And I believe in this team for the rest of the year. I think that this team can make it to the playoffs. I think with Trey Ford there, you're looking really good. MBT is in from backup. Once again, a league of inconsistency, but this team has a lot of hope. It's looking good. It's selling merchandise. It's not like the Edmonton Elks brand is bad. Us over here at the Elks
herd, great.
I think the branding's great.
You'll have to change your show.
Let's just say we have a backup plan for it, and of course,
there you go. That's good to hear.
None of this is permanent, not permanent, but none of this is definite as of this moment. Nothing has been officially laid out.
Of course, yeah.
Nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen on the other side of this fence, and I think
it's just one hell of a rumor.
It's a crazy 24 hours coming up once again, and it's already been a crazy 48.
And this
Edmonton
comes
Elks
after
fans.
The purchase, not before. And because it's one of those things I've heard people like, can the CFL step in or this? No, they don't own the team. Larry Thompson owns the team. CFL doesn't own it. It is the CFL you have to imagine is more of a union of all these teams that are agreeing to be together. In the sense of if the owner of the Edmonton Elks just said, all right, we aren't playing this season, as crazy as that sounds, they could do that. And that could, and it's one of those things where that's where the ball is in Larry Thompson's court now.
As per Dave Naylor, the CFL has not shown any indicators of wanting to step in or intervene. They tend to let the teams and the owners run their own ships.
To be fair,
they know their markets the best.
They shouldn't be getting.
Should.
Yeah.
Well, and like we said, the best injection of fans in a gate-driven league would be changing the team name back to its old name of Eskimos. And then, so that's what we're looking at right now in Edmonton. Like I said, 10 a.m. our time here, Mountain time, looking at between 10 and 11 for that press conference. And it is going to shake things up a bit.
Oh, yeah. And this is with Larry Thompson?
Larry Thompson.
Is there anyone else?
At Commonwealth Stadium, I believe Rick Bollisher will more than likely speak. I don't know who else outside of those two would speak on it. I'm
I
just
can't
trying to
imagine
think.
like Javarius Jackson or anything like that. Like, I highly doubt it's because it's one of those things that this is above him. This is like
No, Tom Richards of the board will more than likely speak. As we know,
okay.
the board is going to dissolve. So the board is around right now. I believe that there's going to be a transition period for both Larry Thompson and the organization. So this is why they're doing it now. Get your feet wet. You can see how the in-season operations work, and then from there, he's going to be taking the reins completely, either strictly by the end of the season or probably by the end of the year.
Yeah. So one question I do have when it comes and this is just you're an Edmonton fan in Edmonton. So what do you think? What do you think is the number one positive thing that comes out of this, and the number one negative thing that comes out of this?
Ooh, number one positive is the team will not fold.
Stability.
The team is going to see money. It's going to see probably some hiring. Like, the team is going to be beefed up now on an
Stability.
operational standpoint, stability, right? That's huge. We're going to see a little bit of consistency in an inconsistent league.
Yep.
But one of the biggest negatives we may see is backlash from a potential name change. I mean, it's a huge loss of resource. You're wasting resources basically to go back to this name. But once again, the flip side, can you call it a waste if you're getting fans in through the gate? So I think
That's true.
it's tough to see.
All comes down to the almighty dollar.
Or
that's exactly
just
it.
keep the double E, go with something else, not Elks, not Eskimos, and then everyone's happy.
I remember when Edmonton Empire was like a big rumor when they were first changing it. But it's one of those things I don't think that's happening.
Colonization is the number one reason why you can't use empire.
Yeah. That actually. Well, and that, I mean, it's a colonial term. I mean, the British Empire, Portuguese Empire, Spanish Empire, like that's the number that is where empire comes from. And so
but can you call them empire when they're 0-7 to start the season?
Yeah, that's another great question. The team isn't winning. And,
doesn't work.
And I think that would make your problems much worse. I just remember that was just a big rumor, so I just figured sharing it in the sense of when they were first changing the name.
Oh, but, it's funny. I was in the One Empire commercial for that marketing campaign in 2016.
Oh yeah.
I got to run behind Michael Riley, Mondo Sewell, Matt O'Donnell.
Oh, there you go.
All of those guys that just won a championship. So, and I'm a big Star Wars fan too, and the whole theme of One Empire was it was Star Wars themed, right? So it was beautiful.
Huzzah!
You two could stay here for hours talking.
Huzzah! Bro, you have no idea how much of a Star Wars fan I am. You have no concept whatsoever.
Nerd's not even the word.
I'm literally like staring at like my big Lego TIE fighter. That was like $200 bucks.
Carter's first kid, that's the boy, is going to call him Luke.
Yeah.
No,
middle name Skywalker.
No.
I have a first edition Lego Sandcrawler, so don't worry. I dabble in all that too. Don't you worry.
There you go. That's worth a lot of money now. There you go. Well, that was fun. We got anything else we got, boys? Rick, Scout, you guys got anything?
No,
I should be good. I really appreciate you guys having me on today. As we know, tomorrow is, I guess technically of time of airing, it will be today. But as we know, this press conference is going to be huge. It's going to change the landscape, potentially even for the CFL. So I'm very excited. Very excited, boys.
Scout, I do have a question for Saturday.
Yep.
Any inside scoop if actually Trey Ford's actually going to be playing or not?
As per most recent reports, Trey Ford did go off the field early to get treated for his bruised rib. So I believe that MBT will be starting there. Don't quote me on it because maybe the Edmonton Elks are going to hold out Trey Ford until last second. So Scott Milanovic and crew make a MBT game plan and we bring in Trey Ford and get the win. Who knows? But maybe there's some. Maybe
this is
there's
why
some
O'Shea
trickery.
is like silent in all press conferences before the game. Doesn't say a word.
To quote that, Jamal Peters has been full practice 2 days, and I think Katratonis may be returning back this week too.
Huge, which is huge for you guys. So I mean, hey, it's any given Saturday, any given Sunday. I would love for us to get the win, but if MBT is going in, I do have my doubts. If he's going in at starter, I don't see why he shouldn't be able to get it. But once again, we've already lost to the Hamilton Tiger Cats once. I do not doubt that we can lose again.
Keep in mind, Bo's not playing, so
Powell's time to shine.
At least Powell can run.
Yep. There's it's going to be a really interesting matchup, and especially if Trey Ford does make it in, to see two running type quarterbacks. Wow, that would be really entertaining.
I'm more nervous about Leak than I am anything.
Yeah,
as you should be. Yep. As you should be. But
hey, Trey Ford opens him up a little bit on the field, and we did see him decrease decreased production in this last game. So I think teams are figuring him out, and you know, you can't keep a good team down forever. Hamilton Tiger Cats, this could go either way this weekend.
There we go. So sounds like a lot of fun stuff there. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure tomorrow, or I guess today when this video airs, you guys go onto YouTube, as the Elks Call will be live. Scout Show. They'll be talking about the fallout and everything coming out of that press conference in the morning with Larry Thompson. So you're not going to want to miss that. Make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, hit the little notification bell, because I asked politely, you know. Maybe I can start asking not politely, but I asked politely this time. So please do that. And so see you guys next time.
Touchdown!